Okay, so I want to talk about this Lucifer idea. So Lucifer is the morning star, and he's the angel of the untrammeled intellect. That's how he's portrayed in Milton, right? And he's allied in some strange way with the serpent in the Garden of Eden.
If I might just interject, if he's the morning star, what do you do in the morning after the morning star rises? You wake up.
Right.
Woke.
Right.
Fuck.
Holy fuck, what is this timeline?
Yeah, that's what I'd like to know too, because somehow we're in the fucking timeline where I'm supposed to listen to a goddamn spoon.
Gimme money, gimme money, gimme money, gimme money, gimme money.
Oh, you know what time it is. Shield time. If you look down in the description, you'll see a link to a Patreon, a Rumble, and a Discord server. If you want to see the uncut versions of these videos, go ahead check out the Rumble. I cut these videos to fit YouTube's wonderful content policies, so if you'd like to see all the spicier jokes and things that YouTube would beat me with a spoon over, go ahead check that out. If you want to come hang out or chat or tell me I'm a fucking retard, go ahead and give the Discord server a look. And finally, if you think the content is worth it, go ahead and give the Patreon a look. You know, patron subscriptions will encourage me to continue doing this. Maybe so I don't have to get a second job. Don't know. And, you know, it'll just help me improve the quality as well. Anything that goes into the Patreon will go back into the YouTube videos in some way, shape, or form. Also, once I finally get one patron subscriber, I will finally remove the annoying as shit Discord notifications. Marketing. So, yeah. Also, if you liked the video, go ahead, give it a like. If you want to see more of my videos, go ahead and subscribe. And if you want to annoy your friends with my amazing voice, or my squeaky chair, go ahead and share it. All right, back to the video. So I have to issue a correction before we start this video. Multiple times I refer to Mr. Spoonman as British in this video because he has a somewhat British sounding accent. Post-recording, I looked at his channel and it turns out he's actually from Africa. Which I think makes a lot of the shit he says a lot funnier in context. But yeah, just wanted to issue that correction. He's not British, he's African. I thought I was done. I thought I was done. I thought I did this. I thought I was done ranting and bashing on the idiots on the right. I thought I was done. And then fucking Nelup, the goddamn Greek boy, sends me a fucking video of this British spoon bitching about something that Jordon Peterson and some other dingus had said. Oh god, I thought I was done, but I guess I'm not. So, for a bit of context, not long after we had finished the rant on the far woke right, Nelup sends me a video of Jordon Peterson talking with another guy about the psychology of the quote-unquote woke right. Really just more of the psychology of these sort of woke extremists in general. And while there is definitely some shit that I disagree with Jordon Peterson on, essentially what the whole talk came down to was there's people who are sick in the head on both sides, and there are people who are just seeking control and power on both sides. And lo and behold, that's just human nature. This is like news to nobody. There's pieces of shit everywhere. But then Nelup shows me this fucking video by this fucking British wiener called it's fucking like ARISTOCRATIC UTENSIL or something? I don't know. I'll put the name. Once I get the correct name, I'll like put it in text or something. And I will link to the original video here as well. Obviously, don't go harass this guy. Make fun of him, but don't harass him. And oh my god. Oh.
let's just get this over with. Oh no, is this? Look, he says some really dumb shit, and that's. We'll leave it at that. He says some really dumb shit.
Where the hell do I even begin with this dumpster fire? Normally I would build up a case for my argument before I go for the jugular and pepper the place with enough cussing to shame a drunken sailor. However, given the pain question, the viral clips and arsenal of laughter leveled at them, I feel fairly confident in jumping the gun here to simply say Jordan Peterson and James Lindsay are a pair of fucking idiots.
Yes, because that's exactly what I want to hear from somebody who's about to try and make an intellectual argument. Normally I'd build up a case, but this time... No. No. No, you better build up a goddamn case to prove you have one. If your argument is just they're idiots because I think so and I'm certain everybody's going to agree with me, newsflash, Chuckle Nuts, you don't got a fucking point. Sit down. Yeah, that's exactly how you want to start the show. Good job. Good job. 10 out of 10.
Recently, they sat down together, made an episode called When the Right Goes Too Far. If your immediate gut reaction to this is, oh god, why? I would say you're fairly justified in that reaction, given that the right has virtually no institutional power at all. To call this premature would be the eye-rolling understatement of the century.
What? I seriously have to explain this now, and it makes me lose. I didn't have faith in humanity, and now I'm losing even more that I didn't even know. Actually, no. Apparently, I have to lose faith in kitchen utensils. No, just because the right, quote unquote, doesn't have institutional power, doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that it's not radical. I told you I was going to say some stupid shit. Here, let's go ahead and look up the definition of the word radical. Radical, especially of change or action, relating to or affecting the fundamental nature of something, far-reaching or thorough, advocating or based on thorough or complete political or social change, representing or supporting an extreme or progressive section of a political party. A person who advocates through or complete... excuse me. Let me try that again. A person who advocates thorough or complete political or social reform, a member of a political party or a part of a party pursuing such aims. A group of atoms behaving as a unit in a number of compounds? What? And then there's just like this non-profit organization next to it. Where in that did it say anything about holding institutional power? It didn't. It just said it's the extreme of something. It's the extreme of a social ideal or of a political ideal. That has nothing to do with whether or not it has institutional power. Newsflash, something could be radical and like one person can believe it. Radical's just extreme. In most cases, the extreme doesn't have power or authority. And that's actually why the situation we've been in with the far left for the past 10 years has been such a big problem. Because it's one of the rare instances where the extreme did have political power. And I'd like to point out that every time throughout human history an extreme has held political power, it has never been a good thing. And normally the few times that they do end up with political power, there is an attempt to remove it. But none of this... Oh... We don't have the right doesn't have institutional power, so it's the understatement or the or early statement or whatever the fuck he said. I don't remember off cat. It's stupid. If anything, people are pointing it out because they are seeing the early signs of it happening in the right. Like me, I've been like bashing this section of my own side of this crap in every video on this channel pretty much, because it's not in power, and I see exactly where it's going. Squash it before it gets anywhere.
In fact, let me read the description here. Is the radical right becoming the very thing it hates? I know it's a description, but what does that even mean? What makes it radical in contrast to what the radical left advocates for, or what? And becoming implies change. Well, considering the phrase in question is woke right, I'm going to assume then the implication is a problem with the actions and not what they believe. Will they discuss any of that? No.
That's a load of bullshit. Yes, they do. I don't know, maybe the words they use are a bit too big for our spooned individual here, but yes, they do.
Unpack the rise of the woke right, a faction of online reactionaries, using the same tactics of victimhood, outrage mobs, and cult-like behavior once exclusive to the radical left. Once exclusive to the radical left, right, so merely the genetic fallacy. Group A does actions X, Y, and Z, and therefore anyone that does the same thing is also somehow radical. Riveting. Well, that answers my previous question, similar actions. The why or towards what end is likely never to be discussed.
Genetic fallacy is the most general fallacy of irrelevancy involving the origins or history of an idea. It is fallacious to either endorse or condemn an idea based on its past rather than on its present merits or demerits, unless its history is in some way relevant to its present value. So the genetic fallacy is committed whether an idea is evaluated based upon irrelevant history. That's not what's being done here. This is not the genetic fallacy. This is a comparison of two things. It is very much relevant, the behaviors and actions of the woke left, because that is what it's being compared to. They're saying, hey, we're seeing similar behaviors and similar methodology as the far left use on the far right. Therefore, they're using the term woke right to describe their behavior. Now, this is why I personally like to use right-wing SJW, because SJW, for those of you who might still be a fetus, that just meant social justice warrior. That better describes the actions, while woke describes more of an ideological standpoint. So if you want to make an argument against the term woke right, that's what you should be using. And that's why I use right-wing SJW. But this is not the genetic fallacy. There is no irrelevant previous information. There's no irrelevant history being used here. This is a pure comparison of behavior between the two groups, finding similar behavior, and thus woke right is being used as a comparisonal term. That's not a real word, I get it. Fuck you.
Followed by BS credentialism. Oh yeah, and speaking of that, I'll give a brief TLDR here of the situation. We'll play some of the stupidest moments and I'll go into some uncomfortable theory work. Every advanced civilization has an assortment of foundational or founding myths, a core set of beliefs, sacred if you will, preferably carved in stone and left alone, usually to preserve some kind of order or keep certain groups in power. Opposition to them might expect some, let's say, recourse, depending on any number of variables, their reputation, who they can marshal, the perspicacious nature of their findings, or what they wish to shift or replace the order with, etc., etc. Oh, and by the way, just to differentiate myself here, I shan't be using any wanky academic terms because unlike these two idiots, I don't speak like a pretentious twat, I just sound like one. But anyway.
Bruh, you don't just talk like one, you just are one. This guy basically just said that he's not gonna use big words because he only talks like a smartass. Well, one, it's better to just be a smartass instead of talk like a smartass. And two, he's not exactly being very smart of an ass. He's being more of a dumbass. Like, you're doing yourself a disservice here by using normal words. You'd be better off using big words, because then you can sound like you know what you're talking about. But right now, you're using small words, so that I can just go look it up, and I can just see that you're being a fucking retard. If you use big words, at least I'd have to do a little homework first, but shit.
This whole thing reminds me of what Thomas Sowell said about intellectuals and society, using Noam Chomsky as an example. Brilliant in the field of linguistics, but if he simply stayed there, no one would know who he is. Speaking about matters outside of it, he sounds completely absurd. There's a presupposition amongst the population that academic credentials is a sign of broader intelligence, and thus affords one the capacity to speak on matters one is not versed in. Popular perhaps, but obviously that's a false one. Actually perhaps not so obvious, but anyway. These two numpties have decided to faceplant into that phenomenon willingly, over and over again.
Dude, Jordan Peterson is literally a psychologist. Like, that was his field of study. And James Lindsay, he has a history of doing shit like this. He was in a group with a couple other guys, or at least one of them was a guy. Well, this one name looks like a girl name, but whatever. Who literally, they just fucking submitted hoax articles to fuck around and see, basically to see how these different fields of how these different academic fields would actually gauge this shit. So both these people are very much qualified to be talking about this shit. They're both known for researching and looking into it. Especially if with James Lindsay, if he's got a history of basically fucking with SJWs back in the day and the woke people. This is what he does. He knows how they think and what they do. He's very much qualified to make commentary on this. The fuck are you talking about? Oh, but I'm sure that you're qualified because you're a spoon.
I'm sure you're all familiar with the concept of the law of the instrument, or the phrase, to a hammer every problem is a nail. Peterson is at least attempting to use his field of expertise and apply it to whatever the hell he's trying to do here. Lindsay, on the other hand, is a mathematician, grappling to understand concepts of theology and power dynamics. I say grappling because it's very transparent to any sane soul he is hopelessly out of his depth. Many know by now I'm no fan of free speech, at least in the absolutist variety, because, well, the very idea of it is ridiculous.
Oh, you sweet summer child. Okay, we're gonna have to crack into this one. Now, I don't expect anybody to not know this, but just in case you don't know what free speech absolutism is, it is basically the idea that unless you are calling for an act of crime or violence towards a group or individual, you can say whatever the hell you want, which is what the U.S. First Amendment does. That is essentially how that's operated legally. You can say whatever you want as long as you're not calling for crime or calling for violence towards somebody or towards a group of somebody's. Yeah. And I'm sorry, it's absolutely ridiculous. Humans have been created with the ability to think and come to our own conclusions. We have been created with the ability to have our own opinions, and we have been created with the ability to share said opinions. Don't tell me it's ridiculous. Now, obviously, you can't go blabbing off whatever stupid idea comes into your head. You need to practice self-control. But that's the key. It's self-control. This guy is essentially saying he wants outside control over your thought processes and your ability to communicate. There's a reason we have the First Amendment in the U.S. There is a reason that they made that the First Amendment, and it was one of the reasons we broke away from the British Empire. One of many reasons. It's one of the reasons that the colonials came here, because they wanted their religious freedom, which does fall under freedom of speech in many cases. But it's ridiculous. Obviously, free speech is ridiculous, according to this guy. Oh joy. Oh fucking joy. This should give us the perfect idea of where we're coming at from this. He is coming at this from the idea of somebody should get to control how you think and speak. Fucking moron. Fucking dictatorial moron. I'm going on a bit of a tangent here, but humanity as a species has fought multiple times for their ability to use free speech. If you're a Christian like me, you believe that God created you with free will, which includes free speech. It's
It's a God-given right for a reason. The First Amendment is a God-given right for a reason. The reason that the Founding Fathers put that in the Constitution is because they understood that this is not something given by men. This is something given by God that no man has the authority to take. So when this guy says he is against free speech, or free speech absolutism, I see that as trying to play God. This is a man who believes either him or somebody who agrees with the shit he does should have the authority to have total control over what you are allowed to think and say. I don't think I need to pull up a history book for how bad of a thing that is. This man has already cemented himself as the sort of person that these people are kind of talking about to an extent. But it gets only worse from here.
I do wholeheartedly believe in the concept of sacred knowledge, and that not all information is to be shared, for some minds are clearly not capable of dealing with that. James Lindsay would be the poster child for this, because ever since he's been trying to push this concept called the woke right, he's been reduced to a laughingstock because he sounds like a fucking schizophrenic. As a matter of fact, I dare say asking someone how one feels about him is a good gauge whether or not one belongs in a mental asylum.
Yes, okay, good to know. Thank you for admitting that you believe people who disagree with you are sick in the head. Because that is how this works. Yes, totally. It is either you agree with John Spoonman, or you are crazy and should be thrown in the loony bin. Because that's how that works. That's how that works. Okay, buddy. Okay, go back to your fucking... Go back to the fucking... I don't know.
Academic Agent made a video almost half a year ago now called Kissin and Lindsay Wrecked Why the Push to AstroTurf Woke Right Failed. It already failed 5 months ago, so to keep pushing it has become this Sisyphean task with an ever-enlarging hunk of shit.
See, this is actually an example of what the genetic fallacy would be, or at least by the definition that I read to you guys. Some guy already made a video on this, so clearly it's wrong and it's failed in your stupid idiot dummy face. That's your genetic fallacy. Again, at least going by the definition I looked up. So, just figured I'd point out that little hypocrisy there.
It was never going to work because Lindsay, as he's desperate to sound intelligent, does not seem to want to follow through with even his own admission that woke is not some phrase that has this deeper meaning in the minds of the public. There's a vein of failure plaguing his entire argument. He's using it as if it has this nefarious universal quality to it, and so by attaching right to it, he's attempting to sour them by association. It's a piss poor attempt at gatekeeping ultimately. Woke is simply synonymous with the leftist. So when he says woke right, you hear leftist right. It's an oxymoron. Naturally, the response is the people's eyebrow as he does a piss poor job of elaborating what the hell he's even talking about. And again, he acknowledges this.
Early on in Jordan Peterson's video, in fact, I want to say in the very beginning, they establish that they are not using the normal, quote-unquote, understanding of the term woke, and then proceed to establish what they mean when they say woke. And it essentially boils down to the mindset and the behavior, not the leftist ideology. And this stupid fucking British spoonman is either too dumb to understand that, or is purposefully avoiding this establishment so that he can continue to bitch about it. Because he is multiple times now, at least 2, said that, oh, well, they're not using the term woke as people understand it, and they won't acknowledge that. Even when they admit they're not using it. What? You have acknowledged each time that Lindsay and Peterson have established they are not using the normal understanding of the word woke. And then still trying to act as if they're using the normal understanding of the word woke when they're not. They've established they're not, and they've established what they are using. Do you expect them to redefine the word woke every time they use it? No. No, when people do this in essays or in conversations, they establish right off the bat, hey, when I'm saying this, I'm referring to this, and then they just continue to say that. They've established that when they are talking about woke, they are specifically using it to refer to the mentality and the behavior and the actions, not the ideology. They're using it comparatively. They are comparing the behaviors of these more radicalized right-wing individuals to the behaviors of the more radicalized left-wing individuals. But this guy can't seem to this fucking Britbone can't seem to decide whether or not he wants to acknowledge they've done that or act like they don't, so he's trying to do both. That is so fucking stupid. You are literally acknowledging that your argument is null, stupid, and wrong. And at this point, I can literally only sit here and think you are either lying or you're stupid.
You are either lying or you're stupid. I'm stupid. I'm stupid.
Which begs the question, why the hell do you keep championing this phrase that even according to you doesn't make any sense? Even the description itself invites a whole heap of scrutiny. When you use the phrase radical, it typically denotes a drastic departure from the norm, something extreme, a warning even. You would think then you would speak plainly so people can understand you. If you spend more time wanking, obfuscating all over the shop and no one has a bloody clue what the hell you're waffling on about, you look shady, you look dishonest, you look untrustworthy, you look like you're hiding something.
No, they look like they're using big words. Look, I get as annoyed with the intellectuals that use the big words as the next person, but at least I can understand these two. Which really makes me kind of wonder if this man genuinely can't understand what they're saying, and that's why he's going off in such weird directions in some places. But no. People who are of the higher intellect, quote-unquote, tend to just use big words around each other. This isn't even an intellect thing. This is a vocabulary thing. People who have larger, more complicated vocabularies just default to using larger, more complicated vocabularies. Just like how people like me who are just have average Joe Schmo vocabularies default to using average Joe Schmo vocabularies. They're not hiding anything. You're just not literate enough to understand them. But even then, I'm probably about as literate as this guy. With the exception of he probably knows a few more philosophical terms than me. But outside of that, he's really making it at least sound like he's trying to be about as literal as someone like me. I'm kind of your average when it comes to literacy. And I can understand these two. Because I watched Jordan Peterson and James Lindsay's video before this one, and I was able to understand it perfectly. Genuinely, it made sense to me. So I'm sitting here wondering where this guy got lost that I didn't. Because either he does understand them genuinely, and he is applying or implying malice where there is none, or he genuinely didn't understand them. But in neither of those situations are they hiding anything, nor does it come off like they're hiding anything. You want to know what comes off like hiding something? Actually hiding something. If you're trying to hide something, you don't use big, complicated terms. I mean, you might. There are people who use big, complicated terminology to throw people off, I will admit that. But they're not even using anything that big or complicated, to be perfectly honest, in their video. So, again, where is this coming from, and what would they even be hiding?
They are, which is why they're both hemorrhaging public approval like it's going out of business. Speaking of that, one last thing. Both of these yahoos have violated a core tenet of Internet's 101. Thou shalt tell the masses what irks thine asshole.
Dude, this whole video is literally you doing the same thing. This whole video is just you being annoyed that you think they're idiots, I guess. It's the same thing, dude. You did the same thing.
Especially when you're pushing something more unpopular than you. You're going to invite a horde of naysayers to sling that thing at you just to piss you off.
Hi.
Hiding in plain sight does not work when you've painted your allegiance on your fucking foreheads. Anyway, let's crack on.
So, what are you in trouble for now?
The woke right. It's a fraught term, right? Because you have woke, which they associate with left. You have right, which they associate obviously with the right. And so now you've got a paradox.
This is just the coming up intro for the Jordan Peterson video, and already it proves what this Spoon Man said about them not wanting to acknowledge that they're using the term woke differently wrong, because they literally just admitted the same thing he's saying they refuse to admit. Also, about goddamn time we actually got into the Jordan Peterson video. Good lord. I've been chewing out this guy's intro for 30 minutes. And mind you, that's only 30 minutes in recording. This took me almost 2 hours.
It's troublesome for those with a conservative bent to throw away the idea of institutional legitimacy. The only possible antidote to really unrestrained investigation. The idea seems to be something like, the more radical the revolutionary precept, the more likely something Luciferian is behind it.
So now we're talking at a very abstract, I think metaphysical is the right word, level for what represents woke. This isn't going to be recognizable to your average Joe on the street who's dealing with, a pride parade. But
and they are called pride parades.
They are called pride parades.
And the cardinal sin of Lucifer is pride.
Right off the bat, a lie, the phrase makes no sense, implications of credentialism and gatekeeping. I think you can tell a lot from a video based on what they choose to intro, and given that I'm familiar with this concept, holy mother of Moses, that was pretty bad.
Deadass, this is from the guy that earlier in the video said he doesn't like free speech absolutism. Which, newsflash, you'd need some form of institutionalism to implement that. You'd need an institution to bring that sort of culture about. Also, what lie? We've already established why the phrase works. Whether you want to accept it or not, there is a logic, there is a grammatical logic behind it. And again, and this will appear later in the video, but it's very hypocritical of him to be complaining about institutionalism. Yeah.
James, you're not in trouble with anyone, except maybe your handlers. Certainly not the woke right. It does not consider you a threat. You get routinely mocked and next. You have been for months now because you sound like a schizo.
Okay, then why are you bitching about him? If you ask me, him being mocked and whatnot would count as him being in trouble with your group. Which, by the way, thank you for acknowledging that there is a radical right. You kind of tried to argue there's not. You tried to argue there's not because of the lack of institutional power, so thank you for acknowledging once again you're wrong.
Still, well done for admitting the phrase you choose to champion makes no sense. It's just bizarre that you keep on trying, especially on X. Have you not seen his X account? My word, call the men with the butterfly nets and keep him away from a phone. He's so obsessed with this idea. I have 3 possible explanations. Paid an amount so obscene the concept of shame no longer exists. His ego is now so bloated his self-awareness is all but evaporated, or he's being blackmailed. He's been so beaten lately, he's making Matt Walsh sound based and funny. That's horrifying.
And once again, we have another example of if you don't agree with me, then something is wrong with you. Thank you, Mr. Spoonman, for once again acknowledging that you view yourself as the arbiter of correct and sane in the brain hole. Now, for the rest of us who actually have 2 brain cells to rub together like pickle chips, we can very well see the problem with this. The simple fact being that everybody disagrees with everybody, and that does not default to them being wrong or having something wrong with them. I like how you have to assume that this man's either being paid, blackmailed, or egotistical for seeing a serious issue. Honestly, though, honest to God, If he's getting paid for that, why ain't I getting paid for that? Because I saw the exact same goddamn thing, and I only have 30 subscribers, and I can't pay my bills. Where the fuck is my woke right money? My PayPal is 123shitass@gmail.com. If you want to give me that, because I'd love to be paid to just disagree with this guy. Since he thinks that his opinions are so sound and so obviously factual that they must be the truth because he thinks so, that since he is so convinced that that is the case, that in order to disagree with him, you must either be cuckoo or paid. I would love to be paid to disagree with this guy. So just saying.
He should be punished just for that alone. What else we got? Yes, the more radical the revolutionary precept, the more likely something Luciferian is behind it. Considering who owns your soul, Jordon, and their current reputation, that's a pretty damning indictment. But given how you describe the woke right as reactionaries who are overwhelmingly traditionalist and Christian, the insinuation of Luciferian is an optics fail so jaw-dropping, I don't even have any words.
Don't worry, because I do. We got here. Do not say, I will repay evil. Wait for the Lord, and he will deliver you. But if you have bitter envy and self-seeking in your hearts, do not boast and lie against the truth. This wisdom does not descend from above, but is earthly, sensual, and demonic. That is... that is Proverbs 20, verse 22, and James chapter 3, verses 14 through 15, respectively, since the Bible has been brought up. I'm not going to say that I think Jordan Peterson is a born-again Christian, because he says a lot of things in just this video alone, not to mention his other videos that a Christian would not believe, things that are not biblical, and he has basically admitted he's not Christian per se, but cat's being silly. But he does have an interest in those sorts of things. I think he said to some extent he believes in the supernatural parts of it or whatever. I don't remember specifically, but I'm also going to counter this idea that the radical right is Christian, because even if they claim to be Christian, they're not acting like it. We're comparing these people to the woke left, and what are specifically their behaviors and their mindsets, and what are the behaviors and mindsets of the woke left. You have wronged me, so I must wrong you. I will repay evil. It is self-seeking, self-avenging, selfish. It is things that the Bible calls evil and demonic, so to call it Luciferian is accurate. If you're going to go from any level of a biblical standpoint, it is demonic. It is Luciferian. He is right. Now, to my understanding, Jordan Peterson looks at that more as a comparison than oh yeah, this is of Satan, but more from the mindset of this is like what Satan did. That's also accurate. So what's your point? Unless you're going to make the argument that, well, clearly the Bible is wrong and atheism's right, yada yada, blah blah blah. But you're not making that. You immediately tried to make a counter-spiritual argument. Well, I hate to say it to you, as somebody who reads my Bible, he's right.
And lastly, of course, the mentioning of the Murray interview. That tells you it's not about the right wing, is it? It's about something else. As if we didn't know. Which begs a question I'll get to later on.
James has got himself in trouble in recent months, once again, for popularizing the phrase woke right.
That is objectively untrue. All he's done is made himself the poster boy for terminally online leads to mental decline.
And you're any better how? Wait, don't tell me. You're better because you line up with your opinions. And obviously anybody who disagrees with your opinions is mentally ill. Right? Did I get it? Did I get a cookie?
Hey, that rhymed. and made it blindingly obvious to anyone with 2 functioning brain cells to rub together, anyone who uses the phrase woke right has an allegiance to, something not American, or even Western for that matter. And what's more bizarre even, the overwhelming majority of them are atheists, which makes no fucking sense.
Well, good lord if I don't prove that one wrong. I like how we have gone from, if you don't agree with me, you're mentally ill, to if you don't agree with me, you have an allegiance to anti-Western ideology. I have a giant fucking American flag hanging in my living room. I have a model of a B-52 Stratofortress on my table. Now, some might call these things irrelevant, but if I was anti-American and anti-Western, would I have an American flag hanging on my wall and a model of the greatest American bomber ever made on my table as a centerpiece? This whole video has been full of, if you disagree with this guy, if you disagree with his opinions, there's something wrong with you, or you are what's wrong. Do I need to do I really need to explain the problem with this? Mr. Spoon here has heavily established that his view of these things is that he sees himself as some kind of moral arbiter, or moral, intellectual, philosophical arbiter. He bases whether or not you are right or wrong around whether or not you agree with him. And I get it, everybody has their bias, nobody ever holds an opinion that they think is wrong. But at least the people I hang around, we actually try to, establish our opinion with some sort of truth and some sort of fact. But this whole thing has just been, you either agree with Spoonman, or you are wrong. You are anti-American, you are anti-right, you are mentally ill. He has established himself as the guiding beacon that you are to follow, essentially. And either he genuinely believes this, or he does this to kind of gaslight or guilt trip you into falling in line. He pushes this idea of, if you do disagree with him, you are the problem. If you do disagree with him, you're wrong. And nobody who is on this side would disagree with him. Nobody who's on the right would disagree with him. That sounds a little fucked up, doesn't it? That sounds a little manipulative. That sounds a little woke. That sounds a little woke right to me. That sounds an awful lot like what the SJWs used to do, where if you disagree with them, you are racist, sexist, bigoted, and a Nazi. And if you disagree with him, you are mentally ill, not on the right, and have allegiances to things that are against America and against the West. I don't know, buddy. If you're trying to say that these two are wrong, you're kind of... I think you'd do a better job at proving them wrong if you shut your fucking mouth, dude. Just gonna be honest. You're not doing your movement any favors by talking right now.
By accusing or pointing out, depending on your perspective.
That was an interesting slip. It's quite a glaring distinction between the two, Jordon. Pointing can be neutral, whereas accused denotes guilty of some offense.
Yes, specifically if you are of a certain opinion. He's talking for you, buddy. He's sharing your opinion because from your standpoint and from people who share your ideologies, James would be wrong and would be guilty of something. And then, people who are from my standpoint wouldn't think that, you fucking numbnuts.
Would you care to elaborate?
The fact that various members of the so-called right are engaging in shenanigans that are very much reminiscent of those that characterize the radical left. And so that's what we talk about today, the nature of the woke right. I discussed the overlap between such behavior and classification of psychopathology with James, the relationship between woke behavior, mobbing, extreme perspectives, self-victimization, protest, gaming the system, and cluster B psychopathology, narcissism, histrionic behavior, borderline, antisocial, and the dark tetrad. And we attempted to determine how our views align and how they differ. And, well, it's a walk through the dark side of ideology.
I like how he all of a sudden switches to just using text to rebuttal what Jordan's saying, or to be more accurate, insult it. Or belittle, maybe. Like, the first one's like, the fuck is so-called right? Well, obviously he's saying that there is a separation between the right and the woke right. He's differentiating the two for you, buddy. He's telling you that there's a difference. You tried to say that too, actually. For a different reason, but he's technically agreeing with you there. Then he brings up the, well, how about what they believe? We're not talking... I've had this conversation before, and the people who want to argue against this idea of, they want to argue there is no idea of right-wing SJWs or woke right or whatever. They always want to go back to, well, what about what they believe? The problem is not even about what they believe. I mean, unless you want to go into the tribalist beliefs of if you do not side with them, you are their enemy. I guess you could talk about that belief, which is very prominent. But I've already done a video on that. But if you're specifically talking about their ideologies and what they're trying to push, it's not about that. We're talking about their behaviors, dum-dum. What do you mean? You mean, what about what they believe? That's not the topic. They're talking about how these people act and how it can connect to things like, psychopathy and what was the other? Narcissism. That was the other one. And oh man. Oh, I'm gonna have fun with this one. For a minute. Narcissism, a personality trait or disorder, is characterized by an exaggerated sense of self-importance, a need for excessive attention and admiration, and a lack of empathy for others. It can range from mid-self-centeredness to a diagnosable condition called narcissism personality disorder. Buddy, Mr. Spoonman, sir, I've already criticized you a few times for essentially holding yourself as the standard for ideology and fact. You've already said a few times now that if somebody essentially disagrees with you, or agrees with Lindsay, which would be disagreeing with you, that they are mentally ill. You have accused people so far who disagree with you of being against Western values, and you have already established that you view yourself and your opinions as the correct standard that needs to be followed, and you have done so through an extensive use of belittling, insulting, and propping yourself up. Buddy, that sounds an awful lot like narcissism to me, dude. It's sounding an awful lot like you are the prime example of what Jordan and Lindsay are talking about. Again, you're not doing your movement any favors by talking. You would do an infinitely better job by shutting up.
Nature of the woke right, which to him is reminiscent of the behavior of leftists, followed by some psychology babble, and again only from the leftist perspective. Given what he just said, I'm under the impression we will learn absolutely nothing about what the so-called woke right actually believes in or why. Which begs the question, what the fucking hell is the point of this conversation?
Look, I think it's safe to say with all the character flaws and other shit that I've pointed out with this man so far, I think I can safely make the conclusion now that he's not going to learn shit from this, but not because there's nothing to learn.
Rather, he's going to refuse to learn anything from this because he'd have to acknowledge that he himself is what this conversation is confronting. It's not that there's nothing to learn here, it's that he refuses to see it. He refuses to be self-aware enough to understand that it's talking about him. And so he's going to shut his mind out to anything that is said. He's only going to look for ways to argue with it, and he is going to refuse to see anything that it brings up. Because there is something to learn from this. Like, again, just from the simple fact that I could summarize the video into one sentence, there is definitely something to learn out of this. But in order to acknowledge that, Mr. Spoonman here would have to acknowledge that it is talking about him, and his narcissistic ass does not want to even consider the possibility of self-improvement.
So, what are you in trouble for now?
The woke right.
Lay it out, man.
It's a fraught term, right? People see it as paradoxical because you have woke, which they associate with left.
Are we seriously doing the fucking picture thing again? Dude. What the hell? I swear, you're trying to make this harder for me now. It's not paradoxical. We've already talked about this. It's not paradoxical, it's comparative. He's comparing this group on the right to the woke on the left. It's a comparison, you... You know, recently they've discovered that there's enough microplastics in the human brain currently to create exactly one plastic spoon. Are you the plastic spoon, sir?
You have right, which they associate obviously with the right. And so now you've got a paradox. And so I've caused myself some trouble by calling a radical segment, not the whole right, a radical segment of the right, woke right, which I kind of started doing, I guess, last fall, September. Yeah. I started using it before that, the term. I didn't invent the term. A lot of people accuse me of inventing the term or credit me with it. This term has been in rough circulation, floating around in the internet space for at least since middle of 22. So it's not a brand new term. I just adopted it and went kind of hard about it.
Okay, so you weren't the originator. It's more than 2 years old. It didn't catch on then. Still hasn't, by the way. It doesn't make any sense to the point of requiring an explanation. And yet here you are, still pushing this term you seem unable to define. Why? Did it ever occur to you there might be a reason it never caught on, James? No, I suspect that's far beyond your intellectual pay grade.
Keeps harping on this "it doesn't make sense" line. How many times do I have to establish it does make sense? And as for it didn't catch on then, it's not catching on now, it kinda has. We keep talking about the goddamn term, it keeps coming up. There are people who are using it, either criticizing it or because they think it's accurate. It caught on, buddy. It caught on, and it made enough sense for people to use it. Why do you keep harping on that? Talk about... This point has been done into the dirt in this video by now. I have chewed that stupid point out so many times. Pick something else to harp on. I thought you were... Actually, no, I didn't think this. No, I take that back now that I think about it for a second. Of course he didn't. Lindsay has... in this clip, straight up established that when he is talking about the woke right, he is talking about a fringe radical minority of the right wing. He is established, yet again, he is not criticizing the right as a whole, he is criticizing the newly formed extreme of it. Because there is a new extreme that is formed on the right thanks to this freaking culture war. And of course, Mr. Spoonman didn't even dare touch on that, because then he would have to acknowledge he's wrong again. He's already done that by accident too many times. I don't think he's keen on doing it on purpose.
And the simplest explanation I give people for, well, what do you mean by woke right? How does that make sense? And I say, well, it's woke people who call themselves conservatives.
I literally cannot comprehend this perspective.
Fucking you and me both, mate. We're just over 4 minutes in, and already his argument is more contorted than a pretzel stricken with cerebral palsy. The level of stupidity is off the charts. Woke people who call themselves conservatives. What exactly would someone who's woke gain by calling themselves conservatives? It can't be for subversive reasons because you're apparently so radical you've been branded for it, so that doesn't work. And if the right does not deem these so-called radical actions toxic to the point of alienation or exodus, what exactly is the problem?
Yeah, look, Lindsay did not word that very well at all. Because that makes it sound like it is, like, that makes it actually sound like it is people who are on the woke left who are pretending to be conservative, like almost infiltration. But having watched this video already, Jordan Peterson and Lindsay's video, I know that's not what he's trying to say. A better way to word it would be, it is people on the right who have adopted woke behaviors and mentalities. Not ideologies, not beliefs. Behaviors and mindsets. That's what he means. So yeah, he worded that poorly, but even then, he didn't word it so poorly that you can't understand what he means.
What separates the left and the right is belief. Actions are in large part determined by belief. They're not separate. You can't be a leftist in a right-wing sphere. You'd be spotted immediately. You could tell the mob was a woke one by the outcomes they were trying to achieve, not how they pushed for them. Now, this framing assumes methodology is the problem, and all methods of flexing power or discrimination are somehow immoral. Outcomes are irrelevant. Which is completely insane. None of this makes a lick of fucking sense. Could it possibly be the nakedly obvious fact that no one who uses the phrase woke right is actually right-wing, and are nothing more than a bunch of pathetic liberals desperate to avoid the reality that their precious ideology has now run its course, or worse, is only compatible with a demographic makeup that makes them very, very uncomfortable?
Did you just fucking try to use a disguised version of the ends justify the fucking means? Did you just try to say that? That's what he said. That's what he fucking said. He tried to say it in a way where it's harder to spot, so you can kind of cover it up and make it look a little nicer. But that's basically what he just said. He just said the ends justify the fucking means. No, the ends don't justify the fucking means. And yes, Lindsay's bitching about methodology. Ding, 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 methodology. Congratulations. You win 2 pennies. You figured it out. Him and everybody who's bitching about the woke right are bitching about the strategies used, the methodologies used to push their agendas and to push their ideologies. Congratulations, you figured it the fuck out. Now if only you could realize that the ends don't justify the means. If I have to steal a bike from one random guy to give it to a kid who needs a bike, the ends didn't justify the means there. I committed robbery. I wronged somebody. I did something wrong. If the means you use are morally wrong, the ends don't justify them. And I get that there are people who disagree with me on that, and I would not trust those people with any position of authority, because they are going to fuck over so much just to do what they think is right. And in the end, I don't even think a lot of them can even prove what they want is right. I will make an example of that with this video, because the ends that this guy is trying to get to not only don't justify the means, but they are objectively wrong. And I can say objectively because I can take them and compare them to history, but I won't spoil it. And this is why I have a problem with this radical right-wing SJW group that is formed, because they have adopted this idea of the ends have justified the means. I know I bitch about Arch all the fucking time, I swear. I get it. I bring him up every time I have to bitch about people. He literally admitted to adopting the everything is political mindset and saying that the right should adopt it, because to these people it has not become about stopping a bad ideology, it's become about winning. the beginning of the culture war, this whole thing started with a moral understanding, a moral ideal of what these people wanted was bad. It was going to ruin society, and it was going to cause problems for everybody, and morally it needed to be stopped, but morally it needed to be fought in a moral manner, in a way that met the morals we were trying to enforce. That has been largely forgotten in favor of, we need to win for the sake of winning. These people have forgotten why. These people have forgotten why we're fighting this, because it's not about the morality. It is not about trying to stop. It's about winning. It has become for these people a war of my idea over your idea, not your idea is wrong and we need to stop it. And this all started with the, oh, well, they're not playing by the rules, why should we? I remember hearing that argument a decade ago and thinking, well, that's going to get us into some shitty situations. Because when you remove the rules, when you just completely remove the rules from the game, it's not a game, it's a shit-flinging fest. And everyone's flinging shit. You can win this game by playing by the rules. I'm watching Trump do it. I'm watching Trump play by the rules of following the laws that have been established for this country to remove corruption and to remove problems and to fix things. You can win by playing by the rules. It is doable. We're doing it. Removing the rules is not right. The ends don't justify the fucking means.
I'll be honest, I already have enough ammo to debunk Lindsay just based on what he said here.
And some of them don't, though. They call themselves right-wing. And they distinguish that conservatives and right-wing are different. But it's woke people, so the whole suite of behaviors, beliefs, even the deep metaphysical constructs underneath those beliefs, and as you recently pointed out, I think the psychology that generates those beneath all of that, the cluster B personality disorders are presenting, and the psychopathologies, psychopathy itself sometimes, all of that kind of feeds upward into this concept of woke, which I think we, can talk pretty fruitfully about. But I don't believe it can only be presented through, left-wing causes. You can present it in terms of right-wing causes or religious causes or other causes, because it's the pathological expression of an ideology or of a belief structure that ultimately is woke.
I think I have a sound to describe what he just said. Very academic. Appropriate, though, I'm sure you'll agree. All he just said is woke as expressions of power I don't like. That's it.
Holy shit, he almost got it. He's half right. Yes, Lindsay is saying that woke is these negative, bad methodologies and the mindsets behind them. Congratulations. Now, he had to paint it in a condescending way, because once again, he can't even bother to make it look like a good point's being made, or else he might have to admit he's wrong again, but this time on purpose. But he's half right. Yes, they are using woke to refer to methodologies. We've already established this, stupid.
And so this term has confused people, it's angered people. I decided to try to put
Who is it angered?
Primarily James, I would think. Every time he mentions this phrase on social media, he becomes a laughingstock because he sounds like a schizophrenic. In fact, here's a post by Orr McIntyre pointing out his schizo posting is a good weather vane for who's an idiot. I concur with the sentiment, by the way. No one is angered by the phrase. No one takes it seriously on account of it not making any bloody sense. At most, may be irritated through repetitious use because it's dumb and won't die off. It's the VD of political phrases.
Motherfucker, didn't you just get done saying not too long ago that it wasn't, catching wind as a term? It wasn't being picked up as a term? Now you're saying that it is and it's annoying, while also saying it's not upsetting people, but here's a guy being upset by it.
Well, this is the thing. This is what has I'll use this word, this is a heavy word for the beginning of a conversation, but this is what has dismayed me. I knew it would anger the people that it applies to, in my opinion, because who would want to be called woke right, first of all? And second of all, it limits their ability to interact because they have a label that's not a good label that sticks to them.
And there it is, slipping of the mask, limits their ability to interact. Curious as you whine about cancel culture, but you have no problem employing a lighter version of it yourself, you hypocritical prick. Like I said at the start, it's nothing more than a piss-poor attempt at gatekeeping, which was obvious from the bloody get-go, because no one on the right uses this label. Like James said, no one wants to be called woke right. No shit, genius. So why would anyone on the right ostracize their own? As if without Lindsay, we wouldn't know so-called radical fringes exist. Oh, thank you, Princess of Liberalism. It's rather interesting they go out of their way to say they won't mention any woke right people on the podcast. Huh. So you'll try and limit their reach via social media, but you won't do it here. I wonder why.
This is coming from the tin abomination that doesn't even support free speech. Motherfucker! No, Lindsay isn't saying let's have cancel culture by calling people I don't like woke right. He's saying it is a label that has negative connotations, and that's why nobody wants to be called it. Yeah. Cool. What he means when he says that is, it is a term that is going to limit people's willingness to listen to you. Now, maybe you could make the argument that it's cancel culture in the same way of calling people Nazis. But I have genuinely not seen anybody use this term, which I do know some people who use this term, in a way that is specifically meant to silence a person. Rather, it is being used as a way to, you know, categorize, hey, this is where they're coming from. That's how I use it. That's how the people I know use it. None of us are trying to say we should shut them up, we should make sure they don't have the right to talk, and we should other them. They're a human being with a right to speech, but their speech falls into a specific ideology that is practicing negative tactics. And that's really where it comes into play. We're not talking about their ideologies, we're talking about their tactics. We are taking issue with how they approach situations, with how they think things should be handled. And we are saying it is destructive, we are saying it is wrong, and that is what we are, you know, separating them as. They're not our own. They're not our own. If you really want to label any difference in ideology, they believe that if you do not completely agree with them, you are their enemy. If you dare criticize them for anything at all, you are the enemy. They are essentially perfect in that sense. And they believe that it is about winning, and that however you win doesn't matter as long as you win. If you want to talk about separating ideologies, there you go. Those ideologies, separate them from the right. They are the extreme right. They are not the right. And yes, people on the right are using this terminology. I am living proof of this. I'm on the right. I use similar terminology. I have used woke right. I have used right-wing SJW. My friends are in the right for the most part. I got a couple who are left-wing, but my friends who are on the right, we use woke right and right-wing SJW. We use these terms. We are criticizing methodology because we have an issue with it. Stop acting like nobody has an issue with this on the right. I guess if you're so far on the right, everybody does look like a leftist to you, I guess.
So that's a Nietzschean revaluation of all values.
Yeah,
right.
It's much deeper than people think. It's redistributing property. It's to transcend property. And so how does this turn into what I said is that the game, which at that point he's looking at, it doesn't matter if it's capitalism or feudalism or even slavery, it's the private property game that he believes is the course of history. He says, well, everything is actually that thing's fault. And people who play that game are the people who are the problem. And that's how he recruits. He finds people who are losing within that game, who are being injured by that game, and says, you know what? It's not you. It's the whole bloody game. Come over here. We've got a different game. But the trick is, who's at the top of that game? With Karl Marx, it was Karl Marx. It wasn't the people ever. If you read it, so what's Communist Manifesto? We'll just break it down. Chapter 1, Communist Manifesto is titled Bourgeois and Proletarians. Bourgeoisie and proletarians. So he describes the relationship between the people who are playing that game, the bourgeoisie, and then the proletarians, who are the workers at the bottom who are making that game possible. And he says, all you guys down at the bottom are getting exploited. You're being alienated from who you really are. You're alienated from your product. Everything's terrible for you, and it's exploitation, so the winners of that game can cheat you. That's the relationship that he puts out. Chapter 2 is communists and proletarians. And he says, so it starts out brilliantly. He says, so what is the what's the relationship between the communists and the proletarians or the workers' movements? It says, we don't disagree with any of the workers' movements. We actually are the highest expression of them. So we take their vision and put theory behind it and take it to a higher level of understanding, and we're going to bring all you guys with. And so naturally, what's going to happen? So let's say he agitates the proletarians to revolt. He's just said that the shepherds are going to be the Communist Party. And then who's going to run the Communist Party? Karl Marx.
Yes.
So it's a whole thing is a giant scam to blame the existing system, to agitate a large group of people who aren't winning within that system, to get them to switch games with him at the very peak.
Okay, so
in case the messages weren't the dead giveaway, that was a very, very long-winded way of simply describing revolution. Oh my goodness, there was someone else on top of a new hierarchy. Yeah, it's almost like hierarchy is the natural order of man. Geez, if only we had a system of government that properly utilized this model. Oh, well, a man can dream. I wonder if he's even aware what he just laid out was representative democracy.
Yeah, there's a little spoiler at where he's gonna take this, but I'm not gonna delve too much into that. Also, I'm just done trying to fucking retort those stupid text boxes. If they come up in his blocks of text, then I'll go ahead and do it. No, he didn't describe representative democracy. I know he's probably going to say that... Okay, I can't say for certain what this guy would try to say in conversation, but I have a feeling he would try to argue that this is a flaw with the American system. We're a representative republic. There's a difference. I don't like just democracy, because it's mob rule, but no, specifically what this guy is describing is authoritarianism. Keep that in mind.
Put a bookmark.
yes.
Because Hitler did the exact same thing. The exact same thing. Mussolini did the exact same thing. Hitler is much more clear. He says, we had this German race. And back in history, he writes this fictional mythological history of the Germans. Some of it, if you read or see it, is just kind of humorously, transparently false about how great they were in antiquity and all of this. So we've got these Germans, and they've got all this, he's got this whole occult, theosophical, Aryan stuff that he's brought in from Helena Blavatsky and read The Secret Doctrine and all this weird occultism he's attached to race. And in Mein Kampf, second volume, chapter 1, he talks about, well, the Nazis have a new world concept, Weltanschauung, and that world concept will be the racial world concept. And then he lays out how the state exists to preserve the race. That's the point, because when you have the race, you have the people who will generate high culture. And when you have the people who generate high culture, then you can advance society to its highest level of expression and man's highest level of expression. Very progressive ideology.
And that's a problem. Why? A nation is its people. A civilization is composed of people. The main function of the state is preservation and defense of said people. Quite a few people believe that is the only function of the state. Defense of its people by historical standards is actually rather normal. I know the concept of homogeneity is frame-breaking to a leftist globalist like yourself. Please tell me he doesn't mean politically, because what he just described is basically Age of Empires advancing through ages and tech trees.
Now actually boiling down why he's stupid. That was just racist. Now, to play devil's advocate, the idea of having a country that can be made up of multiple races is not a normal ideology historically. He is correct about that. That is something that only America has ever really managed to pull off. We are kind of the only country that has managed to be built on an ideology that can welcome people from different backgrounds of different countries in a way that works. Not every country is going to work like that. Fair enough. But this guy is basically saying that the concept should just be race. Well, not entirely, per se, but the second he's like, well, what's wrong with that? Yeah, what's wrong with what Hitler was saying? Hitler didn't want to just preserve Germany, he wanted global domination. He wanted the whole world to be like that. He wanted the whole world to be governed in a way that preserved a single race. Not just Germany. And even then, a lot of Western countries right now, especially after World War II, have been restructured around ideologies that have
in some way mirror the American ideology. Whether or not it's worked for them is a different topic, but if you're going to take that approach, then you need to accept that racism is a bad thing, that the state is not there to protect the race, it is there to protect the citizenry. If you are loyal to the country, if you want to support the country, if you are there to become a member of the country, then the country is there to protect you, because you are the citizenry. But what he's saying is the idea that a country should be protecting a specific race. Yes, that is a historically common idea, but so is slavery, so is authoritarianism in a lot of ways. So there's a lot of things that didn't work out and really screwed the human race over. Oh no, I'm sounding like a liberal. No, I'm sounding like an American conservative right now. Guess what? These are right-wing ideas in the US. He's calling them globalist because they are holding traditionally American conservative ideas.
But what he's saying is, we had this somewhere in this mythical, distant, foggy past, and we can recover it. How? By taking every step that we can to figure out the race and purify the race. And guess what? Everybody who's with me that wants Germany to be made great again after World War I and the ravages of the Treaty of Versailles as they saw it, and the challenges that came with the the interwar period as we see it now. All you Germans who are mad at Europe and mad at the French and you're having a bad time, guess what? There's a mythic Germany that you've lost and we can get it back. Hey, come on, let's go. And here's the ideology. It's our racial world concept. And here's how it's going to be organized, not with this, vanguard Bolshevik model over there that the communists use, but we're going to use what I call the Führer principle. Not me. Hitler called the Führer principle. The leader principle. Of course, who's the Führer? Hitler. So he's on top. And it's this absolutely rigid top-down pyramid of authority.
Someone should really tell James this. People are not all the same. Most people are not like him, and thank God for that, especially not the Germans. If you were asked to list some traits associated with Germany, aside from style, efficiency is probably high on that list. Germans do exceptionally well with structure. And not to praise this particular period of Germany much, would you care to contrast Weimar Germany with the Third Reich, or hell, even Imperial Germany? Because you can have all the resources in the world, but if you don't have the brains to put them to use, the resources don't mean jack shit. Ask NASA. See, we in the West, because we live for consumerism and bugger all else, we venerate free markets and hate the state, for we believe anything that interferes with the goal of maximizing consumerism is a horrid sin. Weimar Germany was a degenerate cesspool. So do tell, how in less than a decade did they go from downtrodden and destitute to apparently a threat to all of Western civilization? Far as I'm concerned, we need to reevaluate a couple of assumptions here. State intervention is evidently not the end of the world, unless you're opposing Germany apparently, or the Germans were insane to accomplish all they did with the chains of socialism around their necks. Some spicy conclusions there, I'll tell you that much.
You knew what the Nazis were?
Most efficient state Earth ever knew.
Quite true, Captain. A tiny country, beaten, bankrupt, defeated, rose in a few years to stand only one step away from global domination.
Alright, this guy fundamentally does not understand Westernism whatsoever, if that's the conclusion he came to and if that's what he thought James was talking about. Westernism is built around the ideas of independence, freedom, and essentially the ability to have control over your own life with minimal intervention from the government or anything else. Minimum. Not none, minimum. There still needs to be a government to defend, there still needs to be a government to, enforce laws, and the laws need to be there to protect the rights of others. The concept of your rights end where mine begin. You don't get to infringe on my rights, you don't have a right to do that, shit like that. That is modern Westernism. That is modern Western ideology. And if he thinks it's just consumerism, this man is disgustingly wrong. Because that is a current result of corporatism, which if you really want to go down a rabbit hole, let me spoil it for you right now. Corporatism is an extension of socialism, not capitalism, not Westernism. It is socialist in ideology. It is fundamentally against Westernism and against Western ideology and against Western foundations. As for his whole little rant there about Germany, yes, the Germans were very efficient. And yes, Weimar Germany was extremely degenerate. Watch the Rumble version of my VTuber video. Excuse me, hiccups. Watch the Rumble version of my VTuber video. We actually talk about that. It was extremely degenerate. He is not wrong about those things. That also doesn't mean we praise the Nazis. And that also doesn't mean that we look at it as, well, that worked for them. It didn't. Because it was going to be a world-dominating ideology. The Third Reich didn't mean the Third Germany. It meant the Third Empire. Hitler wanted to build a global empire. Some might call that a one-world government, aka globalism.
Okay, so I want to talk about this Lucifer idea. So Lucifer is the morning star, and he's the angel of the untrammeled intellect. That's how he's portrayed in Milton, right? And he's allied in some strange way with the serpent in the Garden of Eden.
If I might just interject, if he's the morning star, what do you do in the morning after the morning star rises? You wake up.
Right.
Woke.
Right.
I don't have anything to add to this. I just wanted to play it to show you all how embarrassing this whole thing is.
And what I would say is, well, what's woke right is same energy, different direction.
Hey, James, question for you. If two cars drove the same speed in different directions, do you know where they would end up? Different fucking destinations. 46 minutes in here, and I've yet to hear either of them actually explain what the woke right even is.
Mr. Spoonman, sir, are you actively trying to ignore this on purpose to avoid any situation where you might find yourself having to self-evaluate? Or are you just this dense in the head because you're made out of cheap metal? They've explained in the very beginning what they meant. And we already talked about this. It is people on the right who have adopted a similar mentality and methodology to the woke left. We already established that, yet you seem hell-bent on ignoring that. Because you keep trying to bring it back to what's their ideology, or what is it? They already answered it from the very beginning. They have answered what it is. And look, at this point, you have ignored that so many times that I have to assume you're doing it on purpose.
But there's nothing about a guy in fetish gear at a parade in front of children, for example, that's challenging the norms of a repressive sexual society that thinks that, it should be procreative, heterosexual sex only. That's an excuse. It's pretext. What they're after is the norms that hold regular society together. And my argument is that the woke right does the same thing. They have a cult of transgression too. They sometimes call it being based, but that's a completely bad word for what they're trying to describe, because based should mean based in reality, although the origin of the term is slang for being free-based on cocaine. So they're out of their minds, right? It's just funny how this lines up.
Considering your current shenanigans, I suspect you are on cocaine. And I'd bet heavily it was laced as well if this meandering piss-poor excuse for a conversation is anything to go by. There's a reason why mental illness is associated with the left. Nothing they believe in is objectively true. Give me even a single example of anything the right believes in that is not based in reality. The reality is you don't have the balls to talk to anyone genuinely right-wing because you'd get wrecked.
And again, his concept of right-wing is whatever he agrees with. Newsflash, buddy. Mental illness can happen regardless of your political leanings. I knew a guy for many years, he was a schizophrenic. He's right-wing. He was a Trump supporter. He was more conservative. I know people who have autism who are right-wing. I know a guy who literally his brain didn't get enough oxygen before he was born, so he is very mentally handicapped. He's right-wing. And you know what? They're not even far right. They're pretty, kind of, they're pretty, tame. But like they're not extremists, but yeah, they're right wing. So don't sit here and tell me that being mentally ill is associated with the left. That's only because the left played off of getting votes from the mentally retarded. Literally retarded, not insultingly retarded. But that can happen regardless of your political leanings, buddy. Politics don't determine whether or not you're screwed in the head. And to be perfectly honest, being screwed in the head doesn't always determine your politics.
But what do? Okay, so the left has told us, the far left has told us, you can't be racist. Racist is worse. Everybody's a racist. And of course, they completely made degenerate the concept of racism, the word racism, the accusation, the sky is racist, going for a hike is racist. But they aren't trying to reclaim and say, okay, no, wait. Racism's bad. We don't want to be racist. And nobody should be racist. And the left completely ruined it. So we need to reclaim the term and have this healthy societal norm about discrimination and bigotry. What they're doing instead is saying it's time for us to be a little bit racist. The left said, don't be racist, so we're going to be really racist. And we're going to do it in order to make, to own the libs, as they sometimes phrase.
Oh, it just reeks of that. How do you do, fellow kids? Cringe. Never do that ever again.
The thing, right? But really, it's to reject woke culture as the pretext. They're not acting racist or blaming Jews for everything going wrong in society or, getting further and further into the racial expression or the white racial consciousness or whatever, or the white supremacy or even white nationalism in order to challenge the left.
No.
They're doing it to challenge the center, the healthy core of society and its norms.
Healthy societal norms as decided by who and enforced by what?
Well, that's the target. It's a cult of transgression, but they point in opposite directions. Left, in some sense, says don't be racist. They say do be racist. And this is, again, the communist fascist thing. We're going to liberate everybody. That's what the communists say. They come along. It screws everything up. And,
Oh, no. You don't get to bypass that, you chicken shit little weasel. Why has it screwed everything up?
There's all this oppression in society. We're going to liberate people from oppression, and everything's going to be utopia. That's Marcuse in a nutshell. Okay?
Defined primarily by full sexual liberation.
Of course.
Right?
And
there is...
Hold on. It all goes to hell. And so then the right wakes up, woke, and says...
That was primarily for my benefit. It's getting kind of tedious editing this all together.
Actually, I think the oppression's what was holding us together, so we should do more of it.
Oh, that's a really underhanded and frankly disingenuous term to use given what you're actually describing, which is the enforcement of a standard. You sicken me.
Holy shit, he stopped using the pictures and actually talked. Holy shit! Wow! He actually wanted to try and make points that you could refute. Okay. Cool. So, why doesn't he get to... What? The problem is he didn't actually make any points. I will go ahead and, his last little point there, his actual point, not his, well, what about this? What about this? His actual point. No, he's not talking about enforcing healthy cultural norms. He just said that that's what the far right is attacking. Established and enforced by who? Well, established and enforced by, at least in the case of the U.S., the past 200 years of our history and our government and the laws that we've voted on. So there's that. Things like, I don't know, free speech. Yeah, I'm going to keep harping on him for that one. That's the most autistically stupid thing. He's like arguing as if he's arguing from a free speech standpoint after admitting he's not pro-free speech. Or, I'm sorry, pro-free speech, great, I can't remember the, free speech absolutist. So, I'm gonna keep hammering on that one. But yeah, as established and enforced by who? Well, as established and enforced by the society that has been built in my country, at least, for the past 200 years, and assumedly any other country that is upholding similar ideologies and their history and their societies and etc., etc. But it disagrees with him, so therefore it must be a problem, because let's just hammer this home. In his mind, his ideas and his standards should be what's established and enforced. I'm sorry, buddy, you're not the end-all be-all of this shit. And Lindsley is not talking about attacking, standards, social standards and whatnot. He's has a problem with that. He is right to say that he's talking about, the healthy center, because that tends to be where a society is healthiest, when they're in the center, where there is a mixture of ideas from the left and the right that, funny enough, excludes the extreme ideologies. So, if you really want to have fun with this, a society is healthiest when it actively excludes the most extreme of ideologies. Because lo and behold, the extremes don't tolerate anything that is not them. Extremist groups and extremist ideologies do not tolerate any other ideologies that are not theirs. So yes, they are attacking the social norms and morality and all that shit because it doesn't line up with them. Because a healthy society excludes them. He is not talking about attacking social norms. You are. You don't like the social norms that are being enforced entirely. And you think he's attacking them. Why? Because you have well established yourself as pretty far out there when it comes to the right. And you are in that camp of, this does not agree with me, I will attack it.
And they create a hierarchy in society that's very rigid, again, with that Führer principle from the fascists. Because Mussolini had his lighter version of it. Hitler concretized it for Nazi Germany in 1933, following Carl Schmitt's book, The Legal Basis for the Total State. They created the legal structure for this thing. But the idea was that there is a hierarchy that kept society on the rails, and we're going to go back to that hierarchy in extreme pastiche form. And there's a reward structure socially for the people in the club to push the envelope and attack those normal, everyday societal norms in the center. So again, same energy, opposite direction. But the point is the transgression.
You know, all you're doing is just laying out the foundation of a society that isn't ruled by your fantasy liberal principles. That's it. Do you know what transgression even means? It means to go against. So what is the right actually for that you find so objectionable? It's been over an hour and you haven't said anything concrete.
God damn it, we're back to the text bubbles again. Oh, it's joy. Anyways, what is he attacking on the right that he doesn't like? Well, the far right. It doesn't seem like he has a problem with the right. He has a problem with the far right, with the extremists on the right. And it seems like he specifically has a problem with their methodology. And he's attacking authoritarianism a little bit as well, which, I mean, I see no issue with that. He's not attacking hierarchy, I don't think. Even a liberal democracy or a constitutional republic like the U.S. has, even those have a hierarchy. He's specifically talking about dictators. Also, you would, since you saying civilization, it reminded me a while ago, Mr. Spoonman, you had mentioned how it sounded like you were basically comparing what Lindsay was saying to a game of Age of Empires. Fuck you, play Stellaris.
They're interested in the mythic past from which they've been dispossessed that never existed, a romantic vision of who they were at some golden era in the past that they've been ejected from. But they're still now the alienated outsider. They're still the alien force came in, dispossessed them from who they are, and now they're going to claim it back. And the way they're going to do it is by organizing a fascist structure as an answer to the degeneracy, a very rigid structure, and in a too rigid structure, an answer to the not rigid enough structure of communism.
Oh yeah, because that's what communism is known for. Its lack of rigidity. This mythic past that never existed. James, do you know anything about American history, or European history for that matter? At all? Do you know you can have a civilization that isn't communist or fascistic? It was called all of the fucking world prior to the 20th century. What I find hilarious, you have a hatred of Christianity bordering on a mental disorder. Yet I would happily bet my life, easily, if we look at the shit you champion versus what the Christians want, they would be least closer to the American founding fathers than you. You'd be closer to the Bolsheviks. How do you think Jefferson, who was in favor of castration as a punishment for sodomy, would react to James? If you think he's a schizo in our time, imagine what the 1700s would have made of him. It's been well over an hour for James to finally reach this destination and become this meme. After all of that long-winded bullshittery, he's just another basic bitch shitlip who wants to call anyone he disagrees with fascist. Can we please, for the love of all that is sane, holy, and not boring, let the post-Second World War order die off? Because contrary to what every dim-witted wanker stuck in this agonizing paradigm thinks the world is not an eternal struggle session between communism and fascism, for fuck's sakes. This entire interview was nothing more than a pair of pseudo-intellectuals engaging in a circle jerk. That's it. All this verbal dexterity does is make him look like a Fruit Loop, lost in a sea of concepts he hasn't the foggiest idea how to handle. Another thing he seems unable to handle is his decreasing relevancy, which is probably why he's in this death spiral bitching on X about being sidelined. Oh yeah, and he also thinks he should be the Pope. This try looked at lolcow status and went, quick, hold my beer. He makes Dev look like a genius. There was one person I thought that really nailed him down to a T. He was always just a useful idiot, but now that he's no longer useful, now he's just an idiot. AA was right. Spiritually speaking, James Lindsay really is a woman. He's not an intellectual. He's said idiot. A zealous devotee to the religious doctrine of universal liberalism, which isn't real, by the way. He's a leftist, plain and simple, and he thinks you should be punished if you disagree. I mean, he openly says it in this interview, but he's also written so as well.
Look, I'm not going to claim to know anything about Lindsay's politics outside of this, because I genuinely don't. I don't pay attention to either of these people's politics. I remember Jordon Peterson from the Clean Your Room days, but I can look at a discussion, and I can determine when something is right and something is wrong. And the thing is, a lot of the shit he's talking about is right. He's not saying everything was communism. He was talking about just authoritarianism, which has been a piece of human history for as long as we've been around. He's criticizing that. He's not saying it's been a constant struggle between fascism and communism and not fascism and not communism. Where did he say that? You're implying that yourself, Mr. Spoonman, when he didn't say that. And putting words in people's mouths always pisses me off. I will address the text boxes just this once, because whenever he mentioned the mythic greatness of Germany that Hitler would talk about getting back, you'd always bring about, what about the German Empire and all that came before and all that shit. I mean, one, can you really argue it was that great? I'm not gonna try to. I'm not that familiar with German history. But I'm not a fan of monarchy. I'm not a fan of monarchy. So I personally struggle to call that greatness, but that's a personal thing. But what Hitler was talking about, when he's saying it's mythical shit, he means mythical shit. He means it was made up. Hitler was not just talking about, Prussia or all that shit. He was glamorizing it and making it into something else to push his ideologies. Which, dare I say, is what we're seeing from the woke right and the woke left. The far left pushes utopia. Utopia is like, we can get to this, we can have this. And the right is pushing, honestly, more comparable to Hitler's of, the woke has destroyed us, so if we push back, if we fight for winning all this, the same thing. Again, he's not wrong about this. I refuse to believe, Mr. Spoonman, that you watched this whole conversation with these two and just didn't recognize any of this. I genuinely refuse to believe that, because that, unless you have the biggest case of no brain Down syndrome, that would be impossible. I think after this video and watching what you've said and watching how you behaved and watching how you belittle people who disagree with you and try to prop yourself up and shit like that, I think I can safely say that you are refusing to even acknowledge any of the good points that were made in this interview out of malice and because it attacks your view. Because not even attacks, it criticizes. Attacks would be belittling, anger, belittling, trying to push down, shut up. It's like, shut up, you're mentally ill, you're the problem, you're this or that. He's criticizing you. I'm criticizing you. But I think it's safe to say that you were ignoring it and actively attacking it out of malice.
This is from a book that he co-wrote with the one Helen Pluckrose, who's also thick as a plank, by the way. Look at this. When the liberal left explicitly challenged all of this and advocated the view that people not be evaluated by their race, sex, or sexuality, it held a convincing moral high ground over right-wing elements who argued that they should. Liberals, spearheaded by the civil rights movement, liberal feminism, and gay pride, overwhelmingly won this battle of ideas in the second half of the 20th century and attained legal equality on the grounds of race, gender, and sexuality. So successful were they that by the end of the first decade of the 21st century, mainstream conservatives had largely accepted this too. Those socially or religiously conservative elements who still believe that women, black people, or gay people should be restricted to certain roles in life or denied equal rights became recognized as holding an extremist far-right position and could expect reputational damage in a liberal society.
Hey, Chucklefuck. You know anything about American history? He's right. What he's talking about is factually correct. That is what happened. He is referring to the civil rights movement of the 60s and the results of that movement, and he is talking about how that propped up the social justice movement of the modern day and how the right adopted a lot of the morals and the policies of the civil rights movement. He is correct. Before the civil rights movement, pre and post World War II, there was still heavy amounts of different views of racism and other such in the country. That is just fact. Whether or not you want to argue some of it should have stuck around or whatnot, that's a different story. I believe there were some things that we threw out with the civil rights movement that we shouldn't have. But that doesn't matter. What he's talking about is factually correct. But you're trying to paint it as if it is some personal opinion of this should be done to people on the right or yada yada. No, he's talking about historic fact. This is what fucking happened. You can read an American history book and see that. My God, you are... Spoons aren't supposed to be dense, you know that? They're supposed to be fairly thin so that they are maneuverable.
So believe what we do or else we'll damage your reputation. Interesting. There is so much wrong with this starting paragraph. The opening sentiment there, evaluated by their race, sex, or sexuality, and thereby implying, discrimination along these lines. The reason why this form of liberation hasn't worked out is because it was never real. No one ever discriminates based on one variable and nothing else. If you ask anyone who doesn't like blacks, gays, Jews, or women why, they will give you an essay list of reasons why. It's never just insert label X and that's it. All discrimination is based on behavior, and if you have a functioning brain, it forms the basis of pattern recognition that you apply then to groups.
Man, I already did a giant video on the problems of using pattern recognition alone, so just go ahead and watch that instead. I'm not going to go over it again here.
This is the backbone of a human defense mechanism. It is part of your instinct to survive. If your brain did not discriminate based on group characteristics, you'd be suffering from cognitive impairment. You'd be at an evolutionary disadvantage. You can't revolutionize this out of human beings. It's against their nature. Furthermore, liberalism, the so-called championing of liberty and individual freedom. Look at the last 125 years or so-ish of life on this earth. Have we become more individualistic? No. In fact, if we look at those categories there, race, sex, or sexuality, not only have these not been ironed out, they've become distinct, recognized categories, both legally and culturally for that matter. You haven't eliminated the problem of prejudice because you haven't solved why the discrimination happens in the first place. All you've done was make it illegal to do so, and as such, the ill behaviors amplified.
No, that's not what happened. We actually did successfully get rid of this shit. By the 90s, it was almost non-existent. It was the goddamn liberals who brought it back. Thanks, Obama. That's what fucking happened. By the time it was almost gone, the fucking far left started to push even harder this idea that it was still there to actively bring it back. And I can say this because look at the policies of the Democratic Party historically. They were the party of slavery during the Civil War and shit. They were the party of segregation. Lyndon B. Johnson, we'll have them N-words voting for us for 60 years. They have always pushed for this shit, and when it was gone, there went their policies, so they had to bring it back. Not what he's talking about. That's not what Lindsay was talking about, stupid. It did go away. Because, newsflash, human nature is something we can counter. We're not bound by it eternally. We can go against our nature, and we actively have to build a society and to better ourselves and to build a decent world to live in. We have for all of history. History has been a struggle against human nature in some way, shape, or form.
Liberal democracy does not produce individual liberty. No, it causes balkanization and spawns political factions, which inevitably becomes the client classes for the managerial elite. It's no surprise they're at each other's throats all the time. It's a democracy. Majority wins, ergo political factions and conflict is the nature of the democratic state. Do you know what was my inspiration for this video? This.
Enjoy the commentary, but man, the takes on this have been bad, and it's just like, ugh. You know, they're like, yeah, but like, you know, Ukraine's going to be liberal. It's like, Ukraine is never nowhere in Eastern Europe.
Oh, man. Oh, yeah, they're so fucking liberal. They're so fucking liberal, bruh.
Yeah, I know. And like, you know,
what does it even mean? What is liberal? Define it. Like, what does it even fucking mean?
Yeah.
Thank you, Pastor Louis. But he poses a good question. What does liberalism even mean? Define it. In fact, I can frame break Lindsay's entire pathetic worldview with only two simple questions. Under what rubric do you justify forcing ethnic Europeans to share their civilized and or ancestral lands, resources, or people with those who don't share their God values or bloodlines?
Newsflash, America's never been built on race. Okay, Lindsay and Jordon Peterson, they're in the new world here. Jordan's Canadian. I don't know if Lindsay's Canadian. He might be, but he might be in the States. I don't know. But they're going to be more related to this than John Spoonman over here, who's very, very clearly British. He's British in real life. Yeah, we're not a country that's been built on race. We never were. Did you know that the Founding Fathers played around with abolishing slavery? They chose not to because they knew it would have been too decisive of a choice that they would not have gotten the states to agree upon. And they were already struggling to get the states united under the Revolutionary War, as was, a la the Articles of Confederacy. We've always been a country built on ideology. We've let people in from other ethnicities and other groups. We chose to give them rights. We fought to give them rights. We fought to abolish these things in some cases. Because, newsflash, it doesn't matter if somebody's from Europe, Asia, Africa, or the Middle East. They can hold American values and ideology. Hong Kong, when they protest, there's at least one guy flying an American flag. Supreme Court Justice Scalia, I believe his family was from Hungary, and I remember a story of him talking about when his family came to the U.S., he asked his dad, why are we coming to the States? He said, because we're Americans, son. We were just born in the wrong country. That's always been an American ideology. You can be American regardless of who you are or where you're from, as long as you uphold our ideals, as long as you uphold our morals, as long as you want to integrate and become American. I just watched the Fat Electrician's video on a army infantry group, like an army infantry company. I don't remember the name, but it was all Japanese Americans. During World War II, when we had stripped the rights of Japanese Americans out of fear that they might have been spies trying to undermine the U.S., or that they would sympathize with the Japanese and try to sabotage us because of that. And this was a group of people who came from these families, who came from these groups, who were being not nearly as bad as the Jews, but they were being locked up and oppressed to an extent. And what did they choose to do? They chose to love and fight for a country that hated them. So don't sit there and tell me, it's like, oh, why should we let them in? That's been the American way for a very long time. That's who we are as Americans. We're not forced to, we choose to, because anybody can be an American as long as you uphold our ideals.
What do we ethnic Europeans gain from any of this? He can't answer these. In fact, if you look at what he espoused in the quote, there's no moral weight to his arguments whatsoever, or even functional weight for that matter. It's just liberal dogma. And there are fundamental flaws to his liberal precepts I'll get to in a few moments. You haven't actually changed the hearts or minds of men. You simply exercise the use of state power to force legal equality. From a purely mammalian perspective, this is a revolutionary attempt to change the nature of man. But as Mussolini correctly pointed out, no revolution can change the nature of man. Ironically, James's own worldview has reinforced one of my observations. Politics is not downstream from culture. Culture is downstream from power. And his culture sucks asshole. As such, you have no moral defense against those who wish to use the same power to undo the damage. But having said all that, let's discuss liberty for a second. Not liberalism, just plain liberty. What would you say is the most basic assumed power axiom in our civilization? I would say it's that the people can do no wrong and the elite can never do anything right. That's obviously not true, but the people pretend like it is. So a concept that I've pitched a fair few times now is the balance of power and freedom between the people and the king. The people enjoy the power of freedom and the king the freedom of power. The people be righteous and of good moral character, and so the king does not act like a tyrant. This concept is completely insane to our civilization, because our politicians are all corrupt by default. One would almost think democracy might have something to do with that, but that's a video for another day.
No, that's insane, because last time human civilization tried that, the king became corrupt as fuck. And that's why we don't want to do it again. Because the king gets corrupt as fuck. You were talking about an ideal system, and the thing is, every system is ideal until it runs into corruption. This isn't a result of democracy, this is a result of people. This is a result of imperfect, flawed man being imperfect, flawed man. The whole reason that the US has the constitutional republic that it has was specifically so that we had a way to throw people like that out.
But again, the people can do no wrong and the elite can never do anything right. Let's apply this to liberty. And there's two types of liberty. There's freedom to and freedom from. Freedom to implies the absence of force, whereas freedom from requires the application of force, which makes the conversation a tad bit trickier because under what authority are you exercising that force and why? Now, strictly speaking, that's not true, hence the balkanization, but anyway, let's do a hypothetical. Let's say we take a flamboyant homosexual who lives in San Francisco, the liberal cesspool of the United States. We all know why he lives there, let's not beat around the bush, we know he doesn't. But he enjoys the freedom to in San Francisco. But let's say we put him in Saudi Arabia, Islamic theocratic monarchy. He probably won't last very long there, quite literally. Doesn't have the freedom to in Saudi Arabia. However, the Muslim in Saudi Arabia, because it's a theocratic monarchy, he is free from homosexuals in his society. Who's to say this form of liberty isn't better? Let's apply that to Western civilization and Christianity.
Again, this freaking guy completely misunderstands Western society. Now, he's right about the freedom to and the freedom from thing. And he is almost right about the freedom from part. But he's wrong in saying it's the Western civilization in the modern day, as we understand it, as the American Revolution basically set it up as, because surprise, surprise, this is all American Revolution shit. The rest of the world at the time of the US was still monarchies, was still shit like that, and adopted it from us over time as their systems began to kind of not work out. We have a freedom from. The US is built on a freedom from tyranny. And tyranny only provides a freedom from, or a liberty from, independence. That's why we moved away from a monarchy in the US. That's why we chose a constitutional republic. The freedom from tyranny, the freedom from one man getting too much power with no way to remove him. You'll want a good example of this in practice in the recent year? We put up with 4 years of shitty, sleepy Joe Biden. You know, sleepy McShitpants. 4 years. Corrupt as hell. All abusing power left and right. And he was out in 4 years. You can't do that with a monarchy. A monarchy, you get a corrupt king, you wait till the guy croaks. Or you start a revolution. I have a liberty from your fucking tyranny, boy.
Can anyone tell me why the legally enforced tolerance of homosexuals trumps the Christian principle of recognizing this as sinful and thus has no business being tolerated in a Christian society? Why should his liberty of free to trump my liberty to be free from? Or even if you aren't a religious individual, go full anthropology. How does any of this tolerance benefit our society? Especially the ones that can't reproduce, they're genetic dead ends.
I mean, again, I'm a Christian. I agree with him on the stance of why do we have to accept something that is wrong morally, biologically, etc., etc. But he's not trying to make that argument. He's trying to use that argument to push a different ideology that we'll get to here in a bit. You probably picked up already this guy's some level of a monarchist, but it gets worse than that.
As a matter of fact, look at the stuff he described there. Civil rights movement, liberal feminism, and gay pride. All of these have culminated in catastrophes for our civilization. And if you read books prior to their inception, the clairvoyants who predicted all of these catastrophes, overwhelmingly Christian. My word, it's almost like the Bible produced competent civilizations.
Don't try to use the Bible to back yourself up when I can already use the Bible to show you're just as bad and already did. And don't stop trying to use that one freaking quote as if that is Lindsay pushing his own ideas. Again, I don't know Lindsay's politics. I would not be surprised if he's a liberal guy. But he's making a historically factual statement there. He's just talking about what factually happened. So stop using it as that his fucking opinions. You goddamn SJW. You're doing the same stupid fucking thing. Once again, you're not helping your cause. Want to help your cause? Shut your fucking mouth and let somebody who's better at talking talk. Because all you're doing is proving Lindsay and Jordon Peterson and me and anybody else bitching about the woke right to be correct.
So again, what do we gain from any of this New Age liberal arse water? Let's elaborate on the problem even further. A couple of days ago, just for the giggles, I looked up lowest IQs and found a list of top 10 lowest. Shouldn't that be bottom 10 then? Anyway, on that list, along with a little summary section near the end, the word education is mentioned a whopping 44 times. It is the solution to every single listed country. I took one of them, Nepal. I sent it to a friend of mine and I asked him, what do you notice about these solutions? He said they're all Western. I said, true. But notice they're all external. And he said, they're imposed. Bingo. They are all impositions. This is typical globalist behavior, blank slate theory kind of mindset. I can never quite tell if blank slate theory is more comically evil or absurdly stupid, because if you think about it for more than 30 seconds, anyone who believes in that wank is deranged and completely divorced from objective reality. Education is just information. Access to information does not mean that people will care or utilize it. Everyone knows you can build the most impressive dome loaded to the brim with tomes of knowledge. If you put it in the ghetto, it'll never get used because the people there see no value in it. That is what you're ultimately doing. You're attempting to impose values. It seems to me under the guise of some other benevolent reason, you can justify all manner of implications. So long as you can appear virtuous and your heart was in the right place, you can induce hell on earth. Education is the globalist velvet glove disguising an iron fist.
And you're not trying to impose anything right now, dude?
You're the one who's saying people who essentially disagree with you are mentally ill or they are part of the problem. You're the guy who's accusing somebody of being a globalist on the grounds of they made a historically factual statement. You are the guy trying to prop yourself up as the one who is right and needs to be followed as the arbiter of correctness. And you're not trying to impose something? Now, I get it, yes, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. That's essentially what you're talking about. But don't act like you ain't doing the same fucking thing, you goddamn hypocrite. 'Cause you are. This whole video has basically been you coming from your egotistical viewpoint of, I'm right because I'm a spoon and I'm British and I think this and I'm right. That's all you've been fucking doing. This whole thing has been you acting as if you are the superior person, as if you are the educated one, imposing what you think is right on others. You are the one who is using your ego and is bashing others as being mentally ill if they disagree with you, or being, globalist if they disagree with you, or not being on the right if they disagree with you. So don't sit here and tell me about imposed morality or impose anything. You're doing the same fucking thing.
Just think about this. From a purely evolutionary perspective, if mammals can't survive in an environment and they die off, no one laments this as a tragedy. It's just the reality of Mother Nature. The strong and smart live on, and the weak and stupid die off. If you look at this education imposition, what's the impetus? Under whose authority do you justify this? And most importantly, whose resources are you using? What are you ultimately trying to gain here, aside from satisfying some faceless twat with a spreadsheet? How will this change the rich culture you're also praising so much? Do you even care? And the uncomfortable question no one has the balls to ask, who's to say they have the hardware advanced enough to handle the software? And if they don't, what are you doing? You don't live there, so what's your goal? And even if you did, you're changing them to suit you. In an ironic sense, perhaps there is systemic oppression. You're forcing a set of values on people, attempting to mold them for your own ends. Considering this is the mindset of the globalists, I think the goal is ultimately creating a competent labor class. It's just neo-slavery. How is this not just neo-imperialism? At least with the old imperialism, there was no BS intervention under the guise of benevolence. No, it's just straight up conquest and conquer. We are here to spread Christianity and civilization under the authority of the king. God bless the glory of the empire. Based and honest.
I would not call that based. Definitely honest. No, I don't think he's wrong about the globalist part. I think he is right that this is globalists trying to push something on people for their own end. He's not wrong about that. Just don't act like you're any better, stupid.
Liberalism is not based and honest. It's cringe, weak, and feminine. Civilization is not built on liberty and freedom. Civilization is built on force and order.
One vision, one purpose. Peace through power.
Force and order? Force and order? You dumb fuck, must I remind you of the past 200 years of the United States of America, where after the Second World War, we came out and went into the Cold War and came out of that as the only world power, to the point where the entirety of Europe is dependent on our near existence to keep your ass alive. Force and order, my ass. My whole country's history proves you wrong. God bless America.
But let me end this with one last shock, because personally I find this really funny. In any society, you're going to have hierarchies. Ideally, you would like some mobilization in that hierarchy, and you need people to get along, either through force or incentives. And what's more, there needs to be value in those incentives. If, however, how you move up that hierarchy is based on behaviors and or characteristics that are not equally distributed in that society, and they never are, by the way, you're going to see which group of people navigate that civilization's hierarchy better. And everyone knows where I'm going with this. If you look at what he said earlier about not evaluating people by race, sex, or sexuality, and those that do should expect reputational damages, the problem here is the emphasis on belief. But as I said earlier, legal equality did not stop the behavior that resulted in the discrimination. Question for you, James. How does one get a reputation? How do stereotypes come into being, you dumbass? The supposed unification in America is just production. It's materialistic. It's consumerism. But the reality is, no business wants to be around people who are stupid, unproductive, socially inept, lacking impulse control, or those prone to violence. Those same behaviors and characteristics are not conducive to the success of the material world of business either, and their discrimination will come in the form of location. Everyone knows the more homogenized and European a location is, the better it will be. It'll be cleaner, safer, better run, and more civilized, and the property values reflect that. You pay top dollar because we are top dollar.
God, I didn't know you're for sale. Sheesh, I sure as fuck hope you're on discount.
James Lindsay will never admit any of this, by the way, but if people recognize life is more than soulless commercialism and your so-called values are not universally enforced and agreed upon, the liberal worldview was never anything more than a ticking time bomb. Life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. As we have inadequate replacement birth rates prohibited from practicing the right to association, and women are knocking back more antidepressants than at any other point in human history. I think it's safe to say the liberal vision is not what it's cracked up to be.
Yeah, and your ideas are no better, stupid. In case you haven't picked up on it, everybody, this guy is an authoritarian monarchist. And there is a reason that the United States, my beloved home, moved away from those policies when we became a nation and chose a constitutional republic. There is a reason that the Roman Republic tried to be what it was as well. If you know any of your history on that, it tried to take a system that would combine the best of all the possible different, not systems, but, it tried to take the best parts of authoritarianism, the best parts of democracies, the best parts of et cetera, tried to put them together with a system of checks and balances. We did that for a reason. Mr. Spoonman, you are the reason, because people like you should never be in power. This idea that it needs to be, these things have to be done through force, through order, that it needs to be established. You are literally the exact thing that we're criticizing. If you want to talk about ideology of the woke right, I can't really fully say what their ideology is because we focus more on the methodology. My issue is the methodology. I can agree with these people on things until it gets to how they want to enforce it. But I do know for a fact that a lot of them have similar ideas to you. This idea that not even just as policy or government system, a lot of people that I know who would fall under right-wing SJW or woke right believe very strongly in we need to shut down the left. We need to shut down people who disagree with us. We need to burn these things down the way they tried to burn us. It's revenge. It's revenge policy. It is not, freedom of speech, right or liberty. It's none of that shit. And you're acting as if you have this solution. No, you are the problem. You are in many ways things we are criticizing. And I think the reason that you don't like what Lindsay was saying, I think the reason you don't like this concept of woke right is because you know that it includes you. And I am going to use you as yet another example for right-wing SJWs and why the right, or at least this faction of the right, is starting to become the thing they hate. And why once the woke left and once the far left is out of power fully, you're going to be the next problem. You've literally just acknowledged that you want to establish authoritarianism, and the worst kind too, in my personal opinion, because if there's one thing that I think monarchies do worse than just regular dictatorships, it is the fact that corruption, that evil, stays in power for generations. And unless somebody interjects to stop it, it will always be in power. Men are not perfect, but we are independent beings. We are made to have individual thought processes. We are made to have individual lives that lead us to individual conclusions with our own individual opinions. The reason that a constitutional republic like the US has works is because it leaves wiggle room for that and focuses on that central area where the left side and the right side can come together and agree, and it excludes your opinions. It does not exclude your opinions out of cancel culture. It does not exclude your opinions out of removal of your rights. It removes your opinions because your opinions are allowed to speak, allowed to be proven wrong. Because you are very wrong. Now, I'm going to do something here. This kind of turned into a political government system rant at the end, I know. But you know what, Mr. Spoon Man? I invite you to come debate me on this. I invite you to come talk to me. I invite you to come, get in the rough and tumble of the ideologies, as it were, and have a bully time. I mean, hey, I got 31 subscribers. That can't be that big of a deal. But yeah. Now maybe I can actually focus on bitching on things other than people on my own side being fucking retarded. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like, and please consider subscribing to the channel for more of this stupid nonsense. Also, if you'd like to hang out or just call me a stupid idiot dummy face, go ahead and check out the Discord. And if you'd like to support more content like this, go ahead and give out the Patreon a check. I hope y'all have yourselves a good day.